I stared at the crowd and told the biggest lie of my life. It was still uncertain if this was my biggest lie, it depended on whether or not it would fall apart. But it was certainly about to get bigger because people in the room were still waiting for me to go on. When I first met him at Better Days a year ago, I thought he was an asshole. One in the back gasped, overlapping murmurs spread through the small chapel. I could see several people in the front pews giving me dirty looks. A woman dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue was glaring at me, as if waiting for God's wrath to strike me where I stood. You and me both, lady. I was wondering, too, if I was about to burst into flames. While we all shared our stories, he just sat there, unaffected, like a block of wood. James Waters had never attended Better Days, a support group for depression, because it didn't exist. Or maybe it did. The name had a nice ring to it, after all. He'd show up early just to open the windows, said he didn't want to suffocate from our emotions. Sometimes he'd get so grumpy that people would walk out mid-session. People were visibly shifting in their seats, unease grew in the room like it was a palpable thing. A few were throwing furtive glances around, as if daring others to put an end to my insults to James's memories. People leaned forward, some clutching their chests, hanging on to my every word now. He started giving us little notes, with our own words from the last session, to remind us of things that made us sound more brave than we felt. One day, he brought kids' coloring books for our inner child. It was so cheesy that we decided to paint his face instead. And, shockingly, he let us. None of us had laughed that much in a long time. When I relapsed and stopped coming around, he made an entire playlist of whale music, which I'd told him calmed me, and showed up at my house. I lost it when I saw him at the door. He just walked in without a word, put the music on, and we spent the whole day listening to whale sounds in silence. The woman, who now had wet tissue flakes clinging to her face like confetti, loudly blew her nose into the overused wad. Tears were pouring from her eyes in droves. Around her, others had begun to sob as well. For a fraction of a moment I felt guilt rise up, but I sucked it back in, and it was once again lost in my chest like inhaled breath. I find whale sounds calming, as if I could understand them, at least that much wasn't a lie. Suddenly, the room was doused in tense silence. It was a crass thing to say about someone who had, in fact, flown off the roof. Apparently, that's how he died. They had to hold a closed casket viewing for the poor fucker. But I had a point, which I needed to make fast, before someone chucked a shoe at me, or God himself showed up with lightning in hand. People were openly bawling now. Some leaning into each other, some with their faces buried in their hands. Even those pretending they weren't, were discreetly swiping at their eyes. I could feel my own throat closing up, tears stinging at the corners of my eyes. As a seasoned funeral crasher, I shouldn't have made the mistakes I did today. Usually, I just observed and tried to piece together what happened by being on the periphery. But things got a little out of hand when I ran into Grandma Rose. I was already intrigued by how a 30-something man might have died so young, and she seemed easy to ply with questions. Or, so I thought.